Hey guys, I wanted to share my grandfather's testimonial from his book, The Law and the Promise, or Neville Goddard's book, The Law and the Promise. This is my carrier book. It's got some wear on it, but it's one I keep with me pretty much everywhere I go. And it is the Neville Reader. It's a compilation of Neville Goddard's books. It's got The Law and the Promise, The Art of Believing, Feeling is the Secret, Resurrection, Freedom for All, Out of This World, and Seed Time and Harvest. And I wanted to share this testimonial because it's actually a video on my YouTube channel that you guys can check out if you haven't already looked at it. It's my grandfather actually talks about this. He actually talks about this testimonial and the experiences that he had. But it's in this book. It's in the Neville Goddard's book, The Law and Promise. It's chapter 4, There Is No Fiction. And it begins here. And I wanted to share it with you guys. See, E.O. Locker Jr. It's my grandfather. And it begins here. I wanted to share it with you. And here it is. And you will, if you've watched the other video, you'll recognize this once I get about halfway. My grandfather talks about the exact same thing he says live in his video. Okay. As my story begins at the age of 19, I was a mildly successful dancing teacher and continued in this static state for almost 5 years. At the end of this time, I met a young lady who talked me into attending your lectures. My thought upon hearing you say, imagining creates reality, was that the entire idea was ridiculous. However, I decided to accept your challenge and disprove your thesis. I bought your book, Out of This World, and read it many times. Still unconvinced, I set myself a rather ambitious goal. My present position was as an instructor with the Arthur Murray Dance Studio, and my goal was to own a franchise and be the boss of the Arthur Murray Dance Studio myself. This seemed to be the most unlikely thing in the world, as most franchises were extremely difficult to secure. But on top of this fact, I was completely without the necessary funds to begin such an operation. Nevertheless, I assumed the feeling of my wish fulfilled as night after night, in my imagination, I went to sleep managing my own studio. 3 weeks after, a friend called me from Reno, Nevada, and he had an Arthur Murray dance studio there and said it was too much for him to cope with alone. He offered me a partnership, and I was delighted. So delighted, in fact, that I hastened to Reno on borrowed money and had promptly forgot all about you and your story of imagination. My partner and I worked hard and were very, very successful. But after a year, I was still not satisfied. I wanted more. I began thinking of ways and means to get another studio. All my efforts failed. One night as I retired, I was restless and decided to read. As I looked through my collection of books, I noticed your slender volume, Out of This World. I thought of the silly nonsense I had gone through 1 year ago before getting my own studio. Getting my own studio? The words electrified me. I reread the book that night, and later in my imagination, I heard my superior praise me, the good job we had done in Reno, and suggest we acquire a second studio as he had a second location ready for us if we desired to expand. I reenacted this imaginal scene nightly without fail. 3 weeks from the first night of the imaginal drama, it materialized, almost word for word. My partner accepted the new studio in Bakersfield, and I had the Reno studio alone. Now I was convinced of the truth of your teaching, and never again will I forget. Now, I wanted to share this wonderful knowledge of imaginal power with my staff. I tried to tell them of the marvels they could accomplish, but I was unable to reach many, although one fantastic incident resulted from my efforts to tell this story. A young teacher told me he believed my story, but said it would have probably happened anyway in time. He insisted the entire theory was nonsense, but stated that if I could tell him something of an incredible nature that would actually happen. This is a story about Tony that my grandfather says in the video, but which he could witness, then he would believe. I accepted this challenge and conceived a truly fantastic test. The Reno studio is the most insignificant in the entire Murray system because of the small population count in the city itself. There are over 300 Murray studios in the country with much larger populations, therefore providing greater possibilities to draw from. So my test was this. I told the teacher that within the next 3 months, at the time of the National Dance Convention, the little Reno studio would be the foremost topic of conversation at the convention. He calmly stated that this was impossible. That night when I retired, I felt myself standing before a tremendous audience. I was speaking on creative imagining and felt the nervousness of being before such a vast audience. but I also felt the wonderful sensation of audience acceptance. I heard the roar of the applause, and as I left the stage, I saw Mr. Murray himself come forward and shake my hand. I reenacted this entire drama night after night. It began to take on the tones of reality, and I knew I had done it again. My imaginal drama materialized down to the last detail. My little Reno studio was the talk of the convention, and I did appear on stage just as I had done in my imagination. But even after this unbelievable but actual happening, the young teacher who threw me the challenge remained unconvinced. He said it had all happened too naturally, and he was sure it would have happened anyway. I did not mind his attitude because his challenge had given me another opportunity to prove, at least to myself, that imagining does create reality. From that time on, I continued with my ambition to own the largest Arthur Murray dance studio in the world. Night after night, in my imagination, I heard myself accepting a studio franchise for a great city. Within 3 weeks, Mr. Murray called me and offered me a studio in a city of 1.5 million people. It is now my goal to make my studio the greatest and biggest in the entire system. And of course, I know it will be done through my imagination. Yeah, my grandfather actually did end up getting that studio. It was in Montreal, Canada. Yeah, he had over 1,000 employees. It was the largest Arthur Murray dance studio in the world in Montreal, Canada. Yeah, it ended up getting that. All right, guys, I just wanted to share this testimonial with you, and I will be posting more soon. All right, thank you, guys.